Tack fyrir. Thank you so much for having me today. My name is Gerri Griswold, and I'm the Director of Administration and Development at the White Memorial Conservation Center in Litchfield, Connecticut. But this is my 58th trip to Iceland, so I love you. And this is something that I've wanted to do here for the longest time, so I'd like to thank Esther, especially, and Jon Leitberg and the Institute for having me today to talk about an animal that is crucial to life on Earth. I really firmly believe, and I will debate you forever, that there isn't a living thing on our planet that isn't impacted positively on a day-to-day basis. Every living thing is impacted by the work of bats. And I've been handling bats since 1992 as a licensed wildlife rehabilitator. And I was also given permission by our state and federal governments in the United States to keep bats that couldn't be set free to use in education programs. And that's what I was doing. I'm still educating, but I'm not handling bats anymore because I'm getting too old, and I leave that to the youngsters. But we begin today with this quote from David Attenborough, one of everybody's heroes. The fact is that no species has ever had such wholesale control over everything on Earth, living or dead, as we now have. That lays upon us, whether we like it or not, an awesome responsibility. In our hands now lies not only our own future, but that of all other living creatures within whom we share the Earth. And I am not forwarding this correctly, but that's okay because there we go. Homer Simpson says trying is the first step to failure. So anyway, so here I am. A lover of bats, an advocate for bats, and I honestly believe that they are the superheroes of our planet. And I hope that I'll be able to convince some of you, even though you don't have a bat population here. I know they flit in and out of Iceland. I hope that I can teach you a little bit about them today. The presentation that I do really is what I give to both adults and to children, because we're all on almost a level playing field, and that can even include people as lofty as biologists and researchers of other living things, because we've only been studying bats for the past 75 years or so, with the knowledge that we gained from realizing that they use sonar to navigate and find food. Nobody on our planet ever studied them before finding out about sonar. There were people that were curious in the Renaissance, but nobody did. And that's why all of us are on an equal playing field. My background isn't in science. My background is, I have an art history degree from New York University. But on June 25th, 1992, I found an orphan bat pup in my backyard in Winchester, Connecticut, the farm where I still live today. And she changed the course of my life. I wouldn't be here today if it weren't for that one moment in time. Nobody was helping bats at that time. And I found a niche. I found a way to educate children and to educate adults and eventually end up in the world of conservation, all because of her. So there are about 1,500 species of bats on our planet. And this 1,500 was just bumped up 100 species just about a month ago. So we're still finding hundreds of species of bats. They make up a quarter of all mammal species. And of course, this is very rudimentary for many of you, but mammals have hair, give birth to live young, and the mothers make milk to feed their young. And there are only more species of rodents on our planet than there are bats. How many times have I heard a bat is a mouse with wings or a rat with wings? A bat is a wildly sophisticated creature, and you'll learn today what they're more closely related to. We have our bats on our planet broken up into two groups. On the left, we have microbats, and on the right, we have megabats. The microbats are more populous than the megabats. Microbats see in black and white. They use sonar to navigate and find their food. They can be big and they can be extremely small. The smallest species of bat on our planet's a microbat. And then we have a bat species in the United States, the Western Mastiff bat, that has a wingspan of, I'm sorry, I don't do meters and I apologize for being an American, a 2-foot wingspan. It's big. It's this wide. And they are primarily insectivorous, which makes them major power players in the health of our planet. But there are microbats that eat blood. The 3 species of vampire bats that live in Central and South America live completely from a diet of blood. They're the only mammal that does that. There are bats that eat frogs. There are bats that eat fish. There are bats that eat birds. There are bats that eat bats. But microbats primarily are insectivorous, the #1 controller of night-flying insects worldwide. That's what makes them major role players in the health of our planet. And then on the other side, they're also pollinators, by the way. There are pollinating microbats. But on the other side, in places that are very warm, like Africa, Southeast Asia, Australia, you have megabats, and they get really big, and they have very large eyes that see in color. All bats have a great sense of smell, but the megabats see in color because they need to see their prey, which is ripe fruit. So microbats only see in black and white. They navigate at night during sonar, and our megabats don't use sonar at all. There's one species, the Egyptian fruit bat, that actually can do both. He's a superhero. But the megabats see in color, navigate with their eyes, and have a great sense of smell, and live only in tropical areas. They're one-trick ponies, but they're seed dispersers, they're pollinators, and they're doing really great things as well. So in Connecticut, I'll breeze over these quickly because we don't have 12 hours, but we have 9 species of microbats in the state of Connecticut, which is in New England in the northeast corner. The state that has the most bat species in the United States is Arizona. It's got about 16 species, and there are about 42 species of bats that live all over the United States. All but a couple are insectivorous. We do have a couple of very important plant pollinators. The big brown bat is the species that I've handled more closely and more frequently than any. They're very common across the United States, widely dispersed, and they're known for their capacity to eat moths. They're a farmer's best friend, and they eat the moths particularly that are killing crops, corn crops in particular. So he's a fairly large animal with a 10-inch wingspan. In captivity, he's a Labrador retriever with wings. In captivity, again, I'm not advocating ever keeping a bat as a pet. That's not what I ever did or I advocate for. But when you get to know them, they have personalities that are mind-blowing. So this animal has a 10-inch wingspan. It can adapt to human-made structures. So if you're putting up bat houses or you hear a phrase bats in your belfry, it's always going to be big brown bats. They'll live in rock crevices. They'll live under tree bark, but they also can adapt to a bat house, shutters at your home, in your attic, human-made structures. And again, wildly important across the United States as crop protectors. 40% population decline. What's that all about? Every single bat species in our state is in some state of endangered or threatened status. The big brown bat is the only one that isn't, but a 40% population decline since 2006 because of a fungus called white nose syndrome is the reason why even these animals' populations are declining. Relatively stable, but still vulnerable. These are some of my patients over the years. I would take in bats with broken wings if a veterinarian could fix them, which is infrequent. They would be set free. I would also keep bats. These are the bats that were given to me to use for education. And then there are sometimes pups. That's what a bat baby is called. This one has a nice full belly of milk. You can clearly see the milk through its skin. These are the animals that sometimes would become imprinted. It's hard to teach a bat to be a bat. How do you teach it to fly? How do you teach it to navigate using sonar? You're a human, and a lot of times they become extremely attached to you, and you use those animals for education too. But I've had success with pups in raising and releasing, but also pups that have been with me all their lives. And as they evolve very, very quickly, they turn into almost little humans in a way. They're very primate looking, very primate-like in many, many ways. This animal was probably, I'd say maybe a week or week and a half old. The other one was newly born, less than a week old. They grow fur pretty quickly, open their eyes in just a few days. And this was one of my superstar big brown bats. Her name was Theo, and she and I would shuttle around, as I say, preaching the gospel of bats to people all over Connecticut and New York State and into New England, and all sorts of wonderful presentations that we did for thousands of people in libraries and schools and scout groups and nature centers and the Yale Peabody Museum. We did a lot of work all over for all sorts of people of all ages, all shapes and sizes. Extremely cool species of bat. Um, Another bat that I used to handle frequently is our little brown bat, but today they're an endangered species in Connecticut because of white nose syndrome. This little animal, since you just found mosquitoes here in Iceland, which I doubt will set up shop, and I don't think you'll ever have a bat population here, but this is our superhero. This animal has the capacity of eating 1,200 to 1,500 mosquitoes in 1 hour on a summer night. These animals are insect-eating machines, and the little brown bat is doing yeoman's duty of killing insects, mosquitoes in particular. So a massive capacity for eating insects like mosquitoes, but also a very tiny animal that has been gravely impacted by white nose syndrome. And as we move forward, I'll talk more about white nose syndrome and why this animal and the next few are being so gravely impacted by it. Very much related to our little brown bat is the northern long-eared bat. And here's a species impacted so greatly because of white nose syndrome. The little brown bat is more widely dispersed across the United States. The northern long-eared is not. And it's believed that perhaps this animal will become extinct in less than 20 years. Again, they're not rodents. They don't give birth to litters of babies every year. They have a very, very low birth rate. And this is one of the most vulnerable species. To date, is endangered in Connecticut, and it's federally endangered in the United States. The Indiana bat was already federally endangered when white nose syndrome came into the US. And it's vulnerable, obviously, because the numbers of it are so low. But this one, the northern long-eared, the little brown bat, are all mosquito eaters. All of these guys specialize in killing mosquitoes. And then this little fellow, the tricolored bat, our smallest species with a wingspan of 4 inches, a mosquito eater, wildly vulnerable, and also believed by U.S. Fish and Wildlife to become extinct in less than 20 years. An animal that was extirpated from Connecticut, but has recently been showing up. We think it blew in from Nantucket. It's coming back is our eastern small-footed myotis. Again, very small, mosquito eating and very vulnerable. But it too is endangered, but more and more we're finding them on the coast of Connecticut. More and more in the past couple of years. Why this is happening, that's up for the biologists to figure out. We really don't know. So we have bats in our state that hibernate. And in Connecticut, there are only 3 mammal species that are true hibernators. Our bears don't hibernate, our raccoons don't, our opossums don't. But the bat, the woodchuck, also known as a groundhog, and there's a species of jumping mouse. They are the 3 mammals that go to sleep all winter and stay asleep all winter. But we also have species of bats that are migratory. So these crevice-dwelling bats, these mosquito eaters, these moth eaters, they're all hunkering down fairly close to their summer roosts. But the 3 species that we have that are migratory only live in trees. All of these other bats can live in caves and rock crevices, underneath the bark of trees, things like that. But the next 3 species actually fly south for the winter, not these massive migratory paths like hummingbirds or monarch butterflies or your Arctic tern, but they do fly up to 100 to 300 miles. And the first one is our silver-haired bat. The reason these are threatened species is because of habitat destruction. We keep on cutting down the specific trees that they live in, and their numbers are dropping as a result. They give birth to their young in trees. They live their entire lives in trees. And then in the fall and winter, we're just finding out that some of them just land in leaf piles in a little bit warmer places, and you can rake them up when you're doing some winter cleanup. During the winter, you go out and rake your yard, and you're finding silver-haired bats and red bats. But mostly they're going into the fronts of caves where it's much warmer. The other bat species that we just discussed require much colder temperatures and hibernation. These guys will hibernate, but in the fronts of caves where it's much warmer. The reason I put these two pictures of a silver-haired bat up is because the picture on the left is old school. That's the way you used to photograph a bat. This bat, knowing bats very well, this bat is ready to fly away. It's scared. Somebody went out with night goggles, needed a picture of silver-haired bat for a field guide, and saw one on a tree, and the bat is seeing it with sonar. They can use their eyes at night, but they're not too much use. But this bat is actually looking at the photographer using echolocation. And this picture gets snapped, and these are all the old school pictures of bats that are in field guides. It all looks like they're going to come out and grab you by the throat and kill you. And this is part of the reason why we have these phobias about bats. The way you should photograph a bat is this cool dude on the right. This is the way you photograph a bat. Cool, calm, and collected. I don't have time to beat you up, chase you down the street. I don't have an aggressive bone in my body. If you try to touch me, I'll bite in self-defense. But I'm a guy that is a lover, not a fighter. All I want to do is eat so I can sleep all winter long. And I don't fight with my kin. I don't fight with your neighbor. I don't fight with your dog. I don't try to hurt anything. All I want to do is eat. It's one of the reasons I can channel these animals. If you put a microphone in front of that bat's face and you said, Mr. Bat, Mr. Silver-haired Bat, what is it that you do? What do you do for a living? His job is to eat. That's it. I mean, that's not a bad gig if you're just left alone to do your good stuff. One of the most beautiful species we have in Connecticut is our eastern red bat. And this is also state threatened because of habitat destruction. And one of the few bat species on our planet that we can tell the difference between males and females by their pelage, by the color of their coats. The male, of course, is glitzy, glamorous, bright red. The female has more of a frosted overcoat. And here's a picture on the right of a female eastern red bat echolocating, and that is not threatening in the least. It's just a beautiful photograph of a bat using her sonar. They live only in maple trees, and we get maple syrup from our maple trees. And this is what makes this animal vulnerable because of insect species that are coming into the United States that threaten our sugar maple production. And we'll talk about that in a second. I've got a picture of me holding a beautiful female red bat. This was moments before I was able to let her go, set her free. She had a disturbed hibernation. We had a really warm snap in November, and I was able to set her free. They're really beautiful. They sacrifice brains. The crevice-dwelling bats are much more intelligent than these really pretty tree dwellers. And that I say as a fact, they sacrifice beauty for brains. But one of the things that threaten many of our trees in North America now and in Connecticut are invasive insects. And the one that threatens our eastern red bat and our sugar maples is the Asian longhorn beetle. There's a town outside of Boston, in between Boston and where I live in Connecticut, called Worcester, Massachusetts. And about 15 or 16 years ago, somehow, through importing things on pallets, this Asian longhorn beetle entered Worcester, Massachusetts, and decided that it was particularly fond of sugar maples, and it killed 25,000 sugar maples. This is the only tree that the eastern red bat lives in. These are trees that people have, it's industry. These are trees that people use to extract sap to make maple syrup. Maple sugaring is a huge industry in the United States, especially Canada, and Vermont, and New Hampshire, and Maine, and even into Connecticut. And God forbid this creature gets outside of Worcester and comes into other portions of the Northeast where people are raising sugar maples or tapping trees. Well, today, when you're driving in and out of New England, you'll see signs as you enter a state that talks about not bringing campfire wood. over state borders. We're trying to stop the spread of this insect, and thankfully it hasn't spread. We're trying to stop the spread of this insect because if it gets into our maple populations, not only will people lose their jobs, the eastern red bat will become extinct. An animal that's already, a creature that's already destroyed all of our ash trees is the emerald ash borer, again, another Asian species. And the spotted lanternfly just came into Connecticut this past year. We believe the implications of spotted lanternflies will be on stone fruits like peaches and plums. So people that own orchards are terrified of the spotted lanternfly. This is the price that we pay for living in a small world, of crisscrossing our planet by boat, by plane, even crossing our country. We can bring things to other places, introduce things to other places. I can sadly introduce things to Iceland. I don't think you guys can introduce anything but fabulousness does, because you have, as far as I know, nothing cootie up here. But this is the price that we pay for living on a small planet, and we need to be diligent about watching for these insects. The last migratory species we have is this spectacular eastern hoary bat. There are two species of hoary bat in this picture, the eastern on the right-hand side and the Hawaiian hoary bat on the left-hand side. If you're a trivia buff, the Hawaiian hoary bat is the only mammal species, native land mammal, I should say, because obviously there are cetaceans in Hawaii, but the only land mammal native to the Hawaiian Islands is this subspecies of hoary bat. They're the most beautiful animal and huge, with a 14-inch wingspan, and again, tree dwellers. So all of these bats are threatened or endangered in some sort of way, except for our big brown bat. So, where do they live, and what's their lifespan? What's the birth rate? And who are the smallest and the largest, and where in the heck did they come from? And bats are blind, right? Oh, they're all blind. What about this rabies? Bats and rabies. Esther told me that you guys would be interested in rabies. Rabies and bats, they must have invented it. They probably invented COVID too. What's this white nose syndrome? These dirty bats, they're so ugly and creepy. Is white nose syndrome going to harm me? Because it comes from bats, and bats are really disgusting and covered in disease and awful. And I'm a conceited human being. And come on, Gerri, what can bats do for me? Me, 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 me. Humans are always asking, what can this plant do for me? What can this animal do for me? That's not what David Attenborough was talking about in that first slide. We should be asking, what can we do for the water? What can we do for the grass, the air? I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but most importantly, don't ask what bats can do for you. I'll keep you here all night telling you, but we should be asking, what can I do to help you? You need help. And look at these faces, and you can understand why people are resistant to falling in love with bats. They live everywhere but the coldest areas. I fall in love with your country. You have no bats here, but that's okay. I still love you. But anywhere but the hottest and coldest areas, you'll find them. And what I love as an educator about bats, where I'm teaching children in inner cities, is that it's not just bats, but nature is alive everywhere. And you can help a child understand about nature living in a city, in an urban area, as much as you can in a rural area. One of my favorite things to do, because I am a bona fide bat geek, is when I travel the world, especially to cities in Europe, I'm always looking for bats, and I'm always finding them. Why is that? Why are there bats everywhere? Well, if you go to London, there's a big river called the Thames. The British love animals more than they love humans. If you go to Amsterdam, the Amstel, I've had amazing bat viewings in Amsterdam. The Danube goes through some of my favorite places, Vienna and Budapest. So many bats in Budapest, amazing. And in Vienna, the bats are flying around in the daylight. And you go to France and they're along the Seine, and they actually live in the Eiffel Tower. You might be looking at the twinkling lights of the Eiffel Tower. I'm looking at the bats flying out of the Eiffel Tower. And then, of course, in the US, New York City, the East River and the Hudson. Boston has the Charles, and on and on and on. Before we had planes and trains and cars, we only had boats to get stuff to people. And bats are mostly insectivorous, and they're always where there is water, because water is a breeding ground for insects. And that's why we find bats all over the world, but the hottest and coldest places. They can live for a very, very long time. A big brown bat for 19 years. My first big brown bat lived for 13 years. A flying fox, 23 years. And this amazing Brandt's myotis was found in a cave in Siberia in Russia, 41 years old. How did they know it was 41? It had a band on its wing. It was banded by a biologist 41 years before. They are the longest living mammal for their size on our planet, And they're also the lowest reproducing for their size on our planet. Bats give birth primarily to one pup a year. A baby bat is called a pup. Sometimes big brown bats can have twins. Sometimes eastern red bats can have triplets or even quadruplets, but it is a low birth rate only once a year. And I just have several species up here, a big brown bat on the lower left, a white-faced vampire pup. Come on, how couldn't you fall in love with these animals? A vampire in the center. Those are gray-headed flying fox orphans from Australia, a big brown bat and her very advanced sized pup. And these are epauletted fruit bats from Africa that are primary seed dispersers for fig trees. They give birth to a pup once a year. The pups grow up, and I'm speaking pretty much about Connecticut bats, but mostly US bats. They grow up in just 4 weeks. So the pup is 1/3 its mother's body weight when it's born. That's a big baby. You weighed 100 pounds and you're an adult. The day your kid was born, it was a 33.3-pound baby. They have to be advanced when they're born because they have only 4 weeks to grow up. In just 4 weeks, this pup is fully formed, fully developed, able to fly, and it goes off and hunts on its own. For the first 2 weeks of its life, it clings to its mother using claws and teeth. And I haven't learned how to do this yet, so I can't go up there and fly around with them. But I'm assuming she's teaching this pup how to navigate using the sophisticated sonar. After 2 weeks, the pup is left back in a colony. We can have colonies of bats that are just a few hundred, and we have a colony of bats outside of San Antonio, Texas, that has 20 million Mexican free-tailed bats. It's called Bracken Cave, and now thankfully it's protected and owned by Bat Conservation International. And these are insect-eating bats that fly at speeds of 60 miles per hour. They are seen feeding at altitudes of 10,000 feet. And every single night, this one cave of bats exits Bracken Cave over a period of 2.5 to 3 hours. And when they've returned in the morning, they have eaten 250 tons of insects in one place on our planet every single night in the summer. This is a mega maternity colony. A mother bat spends the first hour or so with her pup learning its scent and its high frequency voice. Every single one of us has a brand. I used to work in radio. And I could be walking in a store and say, "Excuse me," to somebody, and they'll recognize me by my voice. But each and every one of you also is a brand. Your voice brands you. So a mother bat hears her pup's sonar voice, and she returns to Bracken Cave and feeds only her baby. She won't go and feed just any pup. Her pup is screaming for her. Millions of other pups are screaming for their mothers. I can't even comprehend how this happens. Why aren't they crashing into each other? Have you ever been into a cave without lights on? You can't see your hand in front of you. They're all flying in on different frequencies. Who thinks of this stuff? And they're not crashing into each other, and they're navigating their way to find a baby amongst millions of others. To me, this is one of the, I could get teary-eyed thinking about it. It's one of the greatest miracles of nature on our planet. It's one of the most devastatingly amazing things I can imagine. This cave of bats that does all of this good, and then it's a maternity colony because the girls hang out together. You won't find any of the males during mating season. It's just I'm going to mate with this female, and then off I go to a bachelor pad somewhere. These are all females, and they're young in Bracken Cave, just doing incredible stuff. I'm not going to show this next video clip. I'm just going to flip through the slide. But just go on YouTube. You'll be able to find on YouTube many, many slides of the emergence of bats through Bracken Cave. And if you ever happen to be in the San Antonio area of Texas in the US, you can go out and visit and watch this incredible emergence. So that is that. The smallest bat is the size of a penny. It would be the size of maybe one of your smallest coins, and it's called the Kitty's hognose bat. Children call it the bumblebee bat because it's the size of a little bee. And they are insect eating, and they live in Thailand where they are endangered species because of habitat destruction. Very, very tiny. And then the largest bat species is the Indonesian flying fox, a wingspan of 6 feet. And again, I apologize for saying feet, not meters, but you can see clearly from this woman holding this animal how large it is. Basically, one of your work tables is 6 feet, and that's as wide as this animal is. It's also endangered because humans are eating it. It's a fruit-eating bat. So you are what you eat, and we're eating mainly mammal food, mammal meat that is vegetarian. They're eating vegetables. They're herbivores. So we're eating chickens, and we're eating cows, and we're eating sheep and goats, and these are all things that are eating plants. And the Indonesian fruit bat is no different. The flying fox is no different. The difference is that they're not raised on farms. I used to think the picture of the woman holding this bat was something as a tourist attraction, and you could drive down a road in Indonesia and get your picture taken with them. But no, she's selling this bat to market, to be killed, to be eaten as a delicacy. How much does it weigh? About a kilo. That's all they weigh, just a kilo. That I know is 2.2 pounds. They're very big and very lightweight. So to facilitate flight, this animal cannot be weighted down by our heavy mammal bones. Sure, they've got mammal bones, they're solid, but they're extremely refined. And if you were to take that bat that's on the lower picture, strip off that fur, strip off the bones, strip out the wings, you can't eat the wings. It's just skin, it's nothing, and you're trying to feed your family a festive meal in Indonesia, you're going to be killing several of these animals with an extremely low birth rate before you can even make a meal for your family. So human consumption is what's taking away many of our fruit bat species around the world. They're in a group of mammals called Chiroptera. That's a big fancy word that means hand wing, and they're the world's only flying mammal. I was telling my friends before that I still get people that think that bats are birds because they fly. You need to speak to all adults and all children on the same level when it comes to this animal, because really the kids are the ones that have the information. So they are a flying mammal. Bats think, many people think that bats have ancestors that didn't fly. Obviously, this is called evolution. We know that the first horse had 5 toes and was Eohippus, and it was 14 inches tall, and it grew up to the modern day horse we see today on your Icelandic horse. If you look up the inside of its leg, there's this crusty patch called a chestnut. That's a, hello, I once had toes. That's a remnant of a prehistoric toe in our modern day horse. And also, if you x-ray a hoof of a horse, you'll see kind of toey looking things in a horse's foot, but they've evolved. Obviously, we as a species have evolved. We're not dragging our knuckles on the ground anymore. We've got our cousins, the chimpanzees and the gorillas, and we can see with primates how we evolved into a bipedal creature. But we look at bat skeletons, and guess what? Ta-da, here I am, 30, 50, 40 million years ago. Our fossil record indicates that our bats never evolved. I was perfect then, I was perfect now. Maybe someday they'll find some terrestrial thing in a fossil record, but they haven't so far. Every single bat skeleton in natural history collections that are millions and millions of years old look exactly like our modern day bat fossil. I was perfect. I was perfect 50 million years ago. Why can't you guys love me now? Why don't you love me? I don't understand. I do all this great stuff, and I'm an incredibly unusual animal. Who can I be related to? We can rule out rodents. Rodents give birth to, have very short lifespans, except for the larger ones. Well, we'll forget about capybaras and porcupines and beavers. Rodents have short lifespans and give birth to litters of babies every year. Marsupials have a pouch. That's a sugar glider. We even have a marsupial in North America, the Virginia opossum, kangaroos, wombats, wallabies, they all have pouches. This is a glider, not a flyer. Only bats can sustain flight. We know they're not related to birds, even though many people believe they are. Birds lay eggs, they have hollow bones, they've got feathers. There are a zillion reasons why they're not related to birds. And then you get to a primate. Could a bat be related to you? Could a bat be related to you? Do humans give birth to litters of babies every year? No. Do humans have long lifespans? Yeah. Um, can we look at the inside, your skeleton versus a bat skeleton, and see any similarities? You better believe it. If you took this animal to get a manicure, all of the bones in its arms, the humerus, the radius, the ulna, all of the fingers. The fingers are modified, and obviously the radius and ulna are much longer than in a human, but they're all the same bones. Their kneecaps are put on backwards so they can hang upside down. They have 5 toes. They actually have the same bones in their legs as we have, but this guy on the left has a spur coming out of its ankle called a calcar. That means at some point he had a tail membrane. But what I want you to look at mostly is just isolate the skull and the rib cage. He has the same brain to body ratio as a human. This is a very intelligent animal. It's long living, it's low reproducing, and it has absolutely nothing to do with anything else other than the fact that when Mr. Linnaeus created the taxonomic chart, he threw all bats in their order together because there's nothing else like them in the mammal world. A lot of zoologists believe that the larger species of bats, the flying foxes, should be considered lower primates. But they aren't. They're bats because they can fly. So really, you're looking at a distant cousin, not a mouse with wings. And I find that fascinating. How do they fly? Um, they're incredible flyers, but most of them cannot fly from the grounded position. Again, to facilitate flight, you can't be weighted down by lots of muscle, which is heavy, and heavy bones. Just look at the legs of this little brown bat in flight, and you'll see there are only tendons there. No muscles in their legs. All of the muscles around their chest and in their backs, and a little bit in their arms, but they don't have biceps. So they fly, they have to be up at a high elevation, not terribly high, but they need to be able to drop to begin their ascent. And that's how they fly. And most bats on the ground will just, if you approach them, just flop, flop, flop. Sometimes they can cruise off a little bit. For the most part, they can't. They need to crawl up and then drop before they ascend. And of course, there are always the rebels. The vampire bat is one species that can fly from a grounded position. And this really cool dude on the right, the pallid bat, loves eating scorpions. And I'm eternally grateful, A, that we don't have scorpions in Connecticut, but B, that scorpions don't fly. Because in order to get its crispy treat, the pallid bat flies to the ground to get its crispy treat. And wouldn't you know, a scorpion is poisonous. Sting, sting, sting. And the pallid bat is immune to the poison of a scorpion. And he can fly off the ground and take his tasty prey away. So again, bats normally cannot fly off the ground. They need some help by crawling up. And of course, they're not blind. All species of bats see, as you know, some in color on the left, and then the ghost-faced bat, where you can barely see its eyes. They see in black and white, and they navigate with sonar, where the fruit bats, again, use only a sense of smell and their eyesight. The bottom line picture is a silver-haired bat that's chasing a moth. Its sonar is coming out of its mouth. It's bouncing off the mouth, returning to the bat. And when that sound wave returns to the bat, it's not just the moth it's seeing. It paints an entire picture of that animal's environment around it. It's seeing trees, it's seeing barns, it's seeing you, it's seeing everything and its prey target. One of the great misconceptions about bats is when you're watching them fly, they fly very erratically because they're not predictable like birds. That bird is flying south, but a bat is curlicueing all around because its sonar is locked on to its prey target. And the closer you get to your prey target, if you're a bat, and my hand is the prey and I'm the bat, and you're seeing my sonar, the closer I get to my prey, the faster those sound waves are returning to me. On a sonar detector, when a bat impacts an insect, you hear a zipper going off. That's a feeding buzz, and that's one less mosquito or moth that's going to be on our planet, not having breakfast the next day. Two other mammals, of course, navigate using sonar, whales and dolphins, and how we revere and we love whales and dolphins. And of course, I know in Iceland, one of the big problems here now is whaling, and stop it. This is terrible. We shouldn't be doing it. Nobody should be eating whales. They're highly intelligent, gorgeous creatures. And at home, we feel the same way. Iceland, Japan, stop eating whales. And we have TV shows about whales, and everybody loves whales and dolphins. And then you get this guy, this bat, that's eating 1,500 mosquitoes in an hour on a summer night, that is responsible for the pollination of plants, the sole pollinator of plants, that is doing all of this, even its droppings, its guano, are the most expensive fertilizer in the world. It's like, hello, I use sonar. How about some love for me? Nah, you're ugly. You're ugly and creepy, and you're a creature of the night. And we fear what we don't understand because we never studied you. And no, go away. Go away and just be ugly. You're all rabid and creepy and disgusting. So one of my things that I teach children, this is a sidebar for me about bullying, is not ever judging something by the way it looks, because bats have been judged forever just by how creepy they look. They're creepy. I mean, so creepy. I think they're adorable, but maybe, you know, I'm biased, definitely. I love them so much, but never to judge anything based the way it looks, on the way it looks, just through true knowledge and understanding. We become to appreciate that kid that looks different, that animal that looks different. Stop dissing spiders, stop hating snakes, all of these things that do great things for our environment, that look different and are discriminated against because of the way they look. What does bat mean in other language? In France, it's chauve-souris, the bald mouse. In Germany, the Fledermaus, a flying mouse. And in the United States, if you Google a bat, you get a baseball bat. It's all about sports. You'd have to know that a bat's a mammal in order to get information about what bat is. And we know in Iceland, it's leatherwing, leðurblakanna. And in China, it's wufu, it's happiness, it's long life, it's health, wealth, a peaceful death. Everything beautiful and serene is what a bat represents in China. Now, I know what you're thinking. Well, they eat them there too, and this is true. But the symbol for good luck is called the Wufu symbol, and it's a symbol of five bats with their wings interlocked. It's the happiness symbol, it's the health, the wealth, the peace symbol. It means everything good in China. And I love the Eastern uh, viewpoint of bats much more than I love Western viewpoints of bats being bald mice and flying mice and baseball bats and things like that. But this is what you want to know about is rabies in bats. And Gerri, you've been handling these vermin since 1992. How many rabid bats have you had? One. Now, in working with mammals in the United States, you're foolish to not get pre-exposure shots for rabies before you start handling mammals. Everybody in our veterinarians' offices get rabies shots, pre-exposure shots for rabies, because more people come in contact every year with rabid cats and dogs than they do rabid wildlife. But working with mammals, you need to get a pre-exposure shot for rabies. And since 1992, 30 some odd years that I've been handling bats, I have had one positive, and she was at the very beginning of my work with bats. And I was grateful to have that, to always remember that even though the incidence of rabies in bats is extremely low, I mean incredibly low, 1/2 of 1%, that you need to be diligent. If you go on to the CDC, our Center for Disease Control website in the United States, you don't want to read what they have about bats there. I mean, they believe that bats are going to take down the world population. You can't believe everything that you read, and you need to do your own homework. But bats do get rabies. They do get rabies. They give rabies. You can get rabies, and you can give rabies by dying of rabies and your cornea were taken out and they're transplanted into somebody, and that person can die of rabies. When COVID came about, it's a virus. Rabies is a virus. COVID is a virus. Okay, I've got this. You got to watch out for your mucous membranes, your eyes, your nose, your mouth, your genitals are mucous membrane. You just need to be, sanitizing yourself constantly. But I never worried about rabies in bats. I was always watching out for it. In all of the years of handling them, I probably sent 5 in for testing, but there was only 1 that was positive. This young woman, who's probably an older woman now, this is a very old slide, was the only known survivor of rabies once the symptoms started showing. And hers was a strain of bat rabies. It was never concluded that she had touched a bat, but she could have gotten it from a cat. There are certain strains of rabies, raccoon rabies, there is fox rabies, all different strains of rabies, but most human deaths have come from a strain of bat rabies. But bats and humans don't come in contact very often. So some other animal probably picked it up somehow and then it gets into Gianna's system. She was put into a coma and left for a very long time and survived. Once the symptoms of rabies started, she survived. And she's back driving horses and carriages and riding horses, a very active young girl from out in Wisconsin. The most important thing about all wildlife is we just need to respect it. And especially when it comes to children, to teach them not to touch. You don't need that tactile thing with wildlife. Just respect it from a distance. And in terms of mammals in the United States, never ever touch a mammal. And, inoculating cats and dogs for rabies is really important too. So again, 1/2 of 1% of our bat population. So many bats needlessly die every year because they were flying around somebody's house and everybody was afraid they were rabid. A bat that's rabid cannot fly. Period. It cannot fly. Paresis is part of rabies. And when a bat is shedding saliva, when it's an animal shedding saliva and it is ready to die from rabies, and that saliva is what's infected with the virus, that animal is nearly paralyzed. It can barely move. A rabid bat cannot fly, period. So, again, always something to be concerned with mammals, but not with bats. But then COVID comes around and how much we've heard about the wet markets in China and people were eating bats and the bats caused COVID. Did the bats cause a COVID pandemic? Of course they didn't. It was caused, once again, it falls at our feet. Human activities that alter the environment increase the risk of disease spillovers from wildlife to people. We specifically made this pandemic or epidemic by engaging in unsustainable ecological destruction and the dangerous and devastating trafficking and illegal trade of wildlife for human consumption. And that's all I'm saying about that, because we need to talk about white nose syndrome. So in 2006, a fungus entered the Northeast inadvertently on the backpack or the clothing of either a biologist or a spelunker, somebody that explores caves and reveres cave life. And they unleashed, totally by mistake, again, the price we pay for living in a small planet. They unleashed this fungus into deep caves in New York, upstate New York, that only biologists and spelunkers are allowed into. You need permission to go into these caves. And at first, the scientists were always studying bat populations in these caves. And they noticed in the winter in upstate New York that all of a sudden in the caves, lots of little brown bats had this white stuff on their faces. And that's strange. We've never seen that before. And then the depths of winter roll around. And if you had stuff on your face all night that was itchy and preventing you from breathing, and you're deep in hibernation, living off this layer of fat that you've gained from hunting all summer long, you're going to be waking up scratching your face, and then you're going to be depleting your fat reserve, and then you're going to want to come out of the cave and look for food. It's winter. It's New York State. There's no food. Everything's frozen. And all of these little brown bats start dying. So at first it was believed that, oh boy, you folks in the Northeast are in big trouble. All of your bats are going to die. And then look what happened. So today, white nose syndrome is in 38 US states and in 6 Canadian provinces, and we can't stop the spread of it. Bats don't know borders. And just by us going and exploring a cave and going into another cave, we can track this fungus, which is a very common fungus around Europe. It was brought in from Europe. It was either France or Austria, and I can't remember. It doesn't matter. But it was very common. Can we go to Austria and France and say, hey, do you have records? Did you have a die-off of your bats 100 years ago, 200, 300, 500 years ago? No, because we never studied bats. So nobody in the world was studying bats, and all of a sudden, we're all on the same page. Everybody's watching our bat populations in the US die, where this common cold-loving fungus is all over the planet, and no other bats in any other place are dying. And so we're trying to play catch up. And these were some of the first images released of little brown bat deaths in upstate New York, and how absolutely hideous this fungus is. And this biologist is looking confounded. We have no idea how this is happening, but you can clearly see how uncomfortable and annoying it is to these little bats. So why the little bats and not the big brown bats? Because these little species of bats require a little more warmth and humidity, moisture in their hibernation. So when I go to the market and I buy a very expensive package of raspberries, all encased in plastic, and you guys can do this too, strawberries, you look and make sure that not one of those berries has mold on it, because if it does, the next day more will be moldy. And this is how white nose syndrome spreads through these colonies of little bats that require a little bit more warmth, and from the warmth comes more humidity. And that's why the fungus is spreading across colonies of these very vulnerable bats. The next slide is really cool and sad. It shows specifically little brown bat population decline in the United States from the year 2000 up until, I think, 2019. And the red blobs that you're seeing are these robust colonies of little brown bats. And watch what happens. 2006, white nose syndrome comes into the US, and watch what happens. Here comes the fungus. And there go our colonies of little brown bats, taking a very common species and turning it into dust, almost completely gone. But I'm feeling very positive about little browns right now because of work that's being done at White Memorial. In 2017, this is another cool thing about sonar and bats. We identify bat species by their sonar calls, just the way we identify bird species by their calls. You guys don't have a lot of trees up here, so you're very visual when it comes to birding. At home, where we've got lots of trees, we bird by ear more than sight because the trees are always in the way. But we can identify bat species by their sonar calls. So during an acoustic survey in 2017, we had biologists on our property in Litchfield listening for bats. And they kept on picking up the calls of little brown bats. And that was very odd because there was only one known colony left in our state. And through just trial and error and tracking them, they found a colony of 90 little brown bats living behind a bat house that our research director installed on our property. That is impossible. So the hidden people were definitely behind the little brown bats that day, that they would give our biologists access to this colony. So now White Memorial and our state agency, our Connecticut DEEP, Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, are studying this precious colony, which since 2017 has gone from 90 individuals to 300 individuals. So we're going out at night and we're misnetting and we're catching them and we're taking DNA samples. We're banding each of them. We're taking saliva samples. We're taking guano samples in hopes that we're going to find out what is making it tick for these bats. We've got the great habitat at White Memorial. Why is this population coming back? Are they building an immunity to the fungus? possibly, but we don't know where they're going in the winter. So they're not in that bat house in the wintertime. They've moved off to a hibernaculum somewhere. So that's what our scientists and our biologists are doing now. Our research director installed a couple of bat houses across from where they originally found the colony, and all of the little brown bats said, "Oh, I like these a lot more." So all of our colonies have moved now into these bat houses across from where they originally found. A bat pup dropped out, a little brown bat pup dropped out last year. They collected it and they put it back up into the bat house. Its mother would come and get it, but it would be too vulnerable on the ground. A blue jay or a crow or a crummy would come and get it. But all of these things attached to the bat house, they're catching guano. We have now cameras installed so we can watch this colony every night. And I felt for the first time 2 years ago that maybe one of our species is going to recover. Maybe our little brown bat will recover from white nose syndrome. So what can bats do for you? Well, it's about pollination. You have bananas because of bats. You have dates because of bats, figs because of bats, cashews and mangoes. Most importantly, if you like tequila, you wouldn't have tequila at all if it were not for a bat. They are the sole pollinator of the agave plant, and tequila comes from the agave, the sole pollinator of the durian, the sole pollinator of the organ pipe cactus and the saguaro cactus. So many plants are 100% dependent upon bats for pollination. We get food from their good work. And then, of course, their droppings are the most expensive fertilizer in the world. Of course, we don't use it in the US, but countries like Thailand will harvest it every year. Monks go into caves, they harvest it, and then they go and sell it and make lots of money. And then, of course, on the durian is I'm sure some of you might be familiar with it. It's a very stinky fruit from Southeast Asia. Apparently, if you can get by the stench of it, its flesh is very sweet, but the bat is the sole pollinator of the durian. Here's a picture on the lower right of the lesser long-nosed bat that is the sole pollinator here of an organ pipe cactus, but he's the reason you have tequila, and he's the reason you have a saguaro cactus. In Austin, Texas, they love their bats so much because of a colony that lives under the Congress Avenue Bridge in Austin, which is where the headquarters of Bat Conservation International is today, that they named a brew after their bats. And even bat saliva is used in stroke treatment as a blood thinner. I'm on a blood thinner. I have AFib. I'm on a blood thinner called Eliquis. And I'd love to think that the blood thinner that I am on is something that was developed through the study of vampire saliva. Vampire bat saliva dissolves blood, and they're being used today to help people to prevent stroke. I mean, what is to fault here? Um, if you told somebody these were birds, they would be jumping for joy and they'd have their binoculars out and they'd be standing there. If you told most people that these were bats, they'd go hide somewhere or run inside or hide under a car or scream and yell and run away. So what can we do for bats? Well, at home we build bat houses. They're very effective, as we can see on White Memorial's property. Every summer, you're welcome to come. It's free of charge. I have a celebration for the bats where we count a colony of big brown bats in our green barn coming out of our green barn, and we celebrate them with music and sugary cupcakes for your kids, and we count bats and we discuss bats and we celebrate bats. We save open space. The founders of White Memorial gave us 4,000 acres over 100 years ago. During COVID, a Scottish doctor was prescribing time in nature. I don't have to tell Icelanders about how important nature is. You guys live it and breathe it every day. We need a little bit more of that attitude in the United States, but saving open space is imperative, not just for bats and birds and flowers and insects. It is imperative that humans have nature to go out and enjoy, and that's what we do at White Memorial. And what we do best at White Memorial is educating children. I always say one of the toughest gigs that I have is trying to talk to a group of adults to sell them my product. But children have these beautiful minds that love animals unconditionally. And if you can get to a child first and give them that information that they need to move forward to their parents, that's where all ignorance ends. It ends with children, whether it's prejudice, whether it's bats, whatever it is. It starts with children, educating children properly and they are now the superheroes for bats. They're the ones that are moving mountains. They're moving things and making things move forward on behalf of these animals. So at White Memorial now, we are doing something called Bats Count, and you can be a part of it through a joint commitment to bat conservation in Connecticut and beyond. Our Connecticut Wildlife Division and White Memorial have partnered to provide a new and exciting opportunity for everybody. Bats Count begins with a live launch, which we did, and we have cameras installed in our big green barn. So I'll show you that in a second, but I found this just the other day. I like bats, and this is if I were a scientist. This is Esther with her foxes. I like bats, and me and my friends look at bats all the time, and sometimes bats are neat, and we tell our other friends about it, and now our friends also like bats, and sometimes we have bat parties, and so now we all know a lot about bats. And isn't that in science what you want people to do? So you speak like a 6-year-old, and and then hopefully there's a hook, and everybody's going to love bats and have bat parties. Our big green barn houses 400, again, a maternity colony of mother bats and their pups in the summer. And we have a camera. You can see that little white thing off the roof on the right-hand side. That's our outside camera. And then we have cameras inside, and a big Adirondack chair to get kids to sit there. People can come at night and count the bats, or they can come to one of my programs and count the bats and learn about them. And all of this is helping our biologists study these animals' behavior. This was Bernie, one of my old school bats that I use for programming. Took a couple of videos inside our barn so that you can see, hopefully you can see them flying. What am I doing here? I really want to show you this. What am I doing? Gerri. My laser. Oh, come now. Do I need to turn this off? I'm turning that off. Oh, so we're not going to see them flying. Oh, this is a bummer. That's too bad. Because this is a wonderful slide that shows before they emerge from the barn, the cameras installed inside the barn, and how these animals are all flying around and kettling. And it's a really, really neat thing to see, but I didn't get that working, and I apologize. In the summer, you can log in and oh, there they go. There we go. So this is what it looks like, 400 bat species, 400 bats, big browns coming in and out of the barn. And then I thought, well, they must not fly around at night, and especially not in the pouring rain. But didn't they prove us wrong? We're learning all the time that they're hungry. They have to go out and feed anyway. So in the biggest storms, they're doing that. This is my big celebration every year. We have like the best time counting bats and talking about bats and watching bats. And you can do this from home, even from Iceland. You can help count our bats on our bat cams in the summer. This was phenomenal because, again, something we've never seen before. This is a mother big brown bat giving birth to one of twins that she gave birth to that day. And this is phenomenal. Normally, bats do two things right side up. They go to the bathroom right side up, and they give birth right side up. But this lazy bones was laying on a post and gave birth to her baby. And then the umbilical cord is still attached, and she brings her pup back up and starts cleaning it. And we just happened to be watching one day, and there we were watching the birth of a big brown bat pup. And there she is cleaning her baby. So he'll be clinging to her for 2 weeks, then left behind in the colony, and then she's going to let him go after 4 weeks, and he'll be able to fly and feed. He'll associate with her during the summer, but he won't be nursing anymore. This is the great Sarah Bernhardt, a French actress. You can see her grave at Père Lachaise Cemetery in Paris, but her hat, life begets life, energy creates energy. It is by spending oneself that one becomes rich. And I think that's a beautiful quote. Art is my background, and bats in art just rule, but you need to go to the Far East to find the most beautiful art. And this is Japanese from about 1910, Bat Before Moon. I'm a very proud owner of this woodblock print. how they are, and this is a ceremonial robe with bats all over it. This is dated from the 1700s, and it's at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, flying all over this gorgeous ceremonial robe. But a lot of you might be familiar with Bacardi rum. So in Latin culture, bats are seen as symbols of good fortune. But also, if you go back into Mayan, it's downright creepy. They're all vampires and killing, and pictures of portrayals of bats in Mayan culture and Aztec culture, very creepy. But they're symbols of good fortune for Bacardi, the Cuban rum producer, now the Puerto Rican rum. They made the fruit bat their official logo in 1890, acknowledging their debt to these sugarcane pollinators, which also devour destructive insects. Bacardi's pollinator garden at their facility in Puerto Rico has been a successful initiative to protect several endangered species of sugar-loving bats and other wildlife. So I always say, buy Bacardi rum. Every year, the Bacardi family gives thousands of dollars to bat conservation, and they've been knowledgeable about this since the 1890s. It confounds me to believe that 80% of our 1,500 species of bats on our planet are threatened, mainly by habitat destruction. Now we've got white nose syndrome in the United States. And it all really rests on us. And that first slide, the quote by Mr. Attenborough, Sir David Attenborough, about how we are the overseers of the planet. We are the stewards of the planet. We are not the strongest creature on the planet, but we are the smartest, endowed with this brain that for some reason we can't get it together with our own species. Never mind take care of something that looks a little bit different, or we're not curious about it. I always say stay curious about everything, that insect, that bird, that person next to you. They all have stories. Every living thing on this planet, not just humans, has a story to tell, and the story of the bat is one of the greatest. They are superheroes. We all need them to survive, and yet they're still falling by the wayside. So what can I say? Just please be kind and to bats, and keep learning, because there's every reason to want to learn more about them. They are truly one of the greatest gifts that we have in nature. If you would like to learn more about this extraordinary place where I'm so lucky to work, White Memorial Conservation Center in Litchfield, you can go on our website, whitememorialcc.org. Please come and visit us in Litchfield. I will hold you through my own private tour of our bat colonies. If you'd like, or you can ignore me and just go through our spectacular nature museum. You can investigate seasonal volunteer opportunities. Come to Litchfield. We might even be able to house you in education and in research, and explore our calendar of events for children and adults that are available year round. Check out the Bats Count tab on our webpage, our homepage, in season, because right now all the bats are asleep. But I just hope that you've gleaned something today from this. I thank you, Takfiri, for this opportunity, and I hope you have a lovely evening. Thank you so much.